アンさん、今日はどうもありがとうございました。お忙しい中、大変貴重なお時間をいただきまして、今日のミーティングとなりました。
First, my apologies for not being in Japan in person. I had planned to be there, but we've had complications, and I am not able to be there physically, but I am thrilled to be able to speak with you by Zoom. It's very important, the decision of us to talk about U.S. militarism in Japan and all of Northeast Asia. So I appreciate very much the opportunity to be with you. Thank you.
はい、ありがとうございます。Thank you very much. So let's start our interview. それではインタビューを始めさせていただきたいと思います。今、米軍基地での軍事訓練の増加で、地域の社会が非常に危険にさらされています。例えば、昨年、沖縄の離島にオスプレイが墜落事故を起こしまして、それが原因で、飛行停止になったにもかかわらず、今年3月に普天間基地、木更津基地が次々とオスプレイの飛行を再開しました。で、7月2日にはですね、本土の横田基地でテスト飛行が行われました。アメリカ本国での訓練とは大きく違うと思うんですけども、どうしてそうなるのでしょうか。それで質問なんですが、その背景には、日米軍事一体化、日米軍の戦争ゲームがあるのでしょうか。日本の狭い国土では、住宅密集地の真上を飛ぶんですけども、米国での状況はどうなのか教えてください。
The the training for the United States is usually done on military bases, and the military bases have certain training areas that are away from even the populated areas on a military base. For example, residential housing areas. So it's really very much different than what you have in Japan, where the military bases are right in the center of very populated areas. And for example, in the United States, we would not put up with allowing a military base in the middle of say New York City and the Ospreys flying over New York City. Even in Hawaii, where I live, the ospreys do not fly over the land of the island of Oahu. They fly out to sea, and if they do fly over the land, they're over very unpopulated areas, the mountainous areas. But in general, the United States has mandated that the U.S. military not fly over populated areas in the United States. And that's where I think the citizens of Japan can be very effective in continuing to push their government to say to the U.S. military, you cannot fly, particularly those ospreys, over our populated areas because you're killing our people. The history of crashes and of things falling off the aircraft is well, you know the history of it. It's very terrible, and the U.S. should not be doing to other countries what it will not do in the United States, which is it cannot fly over populated areas.
Thank you very much. 日本の国土面積のわずか 0.6% にしか過ぎない沖縄にですよ、米軍基地の7割が集中しています。このため沖縄では米兵による性的暴行が続発して、1945年から21年まで分かっているだけでも約950人の女性が被害に遭っているということを沖縄女性史家の宮城晴美さんが沖縄タイムズに寄稿しています。昨年の12月24日に、米軍の空軍の兵隊がですね、16歳未満の女性を公園で誘拐して暴行したとして逮捕され起訴されました。この件が沖縄県当局に知らされなかったところ、今年5月に海兵隊員による不同意性交致傷事件が発生しました。この件が6月25日に報道で明らかにされて、そこで初めて県当局がこの2件の暴行事件について知ることになりました。 日米は1997年、在日米軍の事件・事故発生時における通報手続きに合意してまして、両事件を県に通告しなかったことは、明らかにこの合意に反します。国や捜査機関による非公表が再発防止の芽を摘んだ、あるいは公表しておれば、5月の事件は防げたのではないかという、そういう批判の声が今、沖縄では渦巻いて、抗議声明が次々と発せられています。ここで質問です。日米安全保障条約に基づいて駐留している米軍が沖縄の女性の安全保障を脅かしているということをどのように考えますか？またこうした事態が繰り返されるのを防ぐにはどうすべきとお考えになりますか？
Well, it's a horrible, horrible thing that continues to happen on Okinawa and in other places where the U.S. military has military bases. There is no excuse for it. It is a criminal act committed by military personnel. It's criminal when it's in Okinawa, when it's on mainland Japan, when it's in the United States. And these perpetrators must be prosecuted. And their crimes must be made public so that the public knows to be very wary of servicemen and women. And I say that after having been in the U.S. military for 29 years. The U.S. military does not like to disclose or publicize when it makes mistakes or when there are criminal actions. And the fact that the prefecture of Okinawa was only finding out about these things months after they happened shows that there's been a huge breakdown in the agreement that the United States had that the U.S. would disclose any of these incidents, these terrible crimes that had happened. So I think and the people of Okinawa have been so forceful over the years of having tens of thousands of people take to the streets to yell at the U.S. military. And it has had an effect. I mean, when the U.S. ambassador has to come to Okinawa to apologize, when finally the U.S. military has to say, we may have too many Marines that are on Okinawa and we're going to transfer 5,000 of them to Guam. So citizen activism is very, very important with this. And the more active it is, and the more pressure put on the military, that the military has to have what are called stand down days, that they have to stop their military exercises and have to stop and talk to everyone on that base about the issue, the criminal acts of sexual assault. And this is the time that the base commanders in Okinawa must stop their operations and have another day or 2 days of reflection on these criminal acts, and to say to these young men, if this happens again, you are going to be prosecuted immediately for it and not be waiting. We still don't know if these men have been prosecuted for the sexual assaults. So that's another thing we must find out. Did the military fly these men out of Okinawa and take them back to the mainland of the U.S., or have they been held on Okinawa for the Japanese court system to act on them? As far as I know, we still don't know. So that's important that we find out, and that the base commanders be held accountable for not reporting to the people of Okinawa and the people of all of Japan that yet one more of these horrible sexual assaults have taken place. In the U.S. military, the level of sexual assaults within the military continues to rise. It is not going down. The assaults of military men on military women continue to go up. So it's something that must be, the spotlight must be shown on it. And particularly in Okinawa, where there has been such a legacy, a history of U.S. military sexually assaulting women and children of Okinawa.
Thank you very much. 日本政府はアメリカの意向に沿って日本と海外で アメリカと一緒に戦争をする国づくりを急ピッチで進めています。具体的には2015年、憲法解釈を強引に変更し、集団的自衛権の行使を認めた安保法制を制定しました。アメリカが攻撃されたとき、日本が一緒に戦うことを可能にしたんですね。で、軍事費をGDP の1% から2%に最近増額しました。昨年12月に中国や北朝鮮を攻撃できる敵基地攻撃能力を保有することを決めました。沖縄を含む南西諸島の自衛隊基地に敵基地を攻撃できるミサイルを配備しつつあります。中国に対抗するために日米間だけでなく日米韓の共同訓練の増加、それからオーカスと呼ばれる、米国、イギリス、オーストラリアと日本との連携など、アメリカを中心に多国間による軍事協力体制を強めています。長崎空港など日本各地の民間空港や港を整備して戦争の際に活用する計画も進めています。中国を念頭に戦争になった時の米軍と自衛隊の指揮統制の連携を強化するということを言い換えれば米軍が指揮を取るということだと思うんですけども、それを日米首脳会談で合意しました。で、ここで質問です。日本に対してこのような戦争協力体制を整備させた上で、アメリカはどのような戦争、紛争を想定して、そのような戦争、紛争が発生した場合、自衛隊を含む日本にどのような役割を果たすことを求めているのでしょうか。
Well, the increase in militarization of Japan on behalf of the United States is very, very worrisome. The changing of Article 9 was a sad day in history. That indeed it's no longer it's not a peace constitution any longer. It's now a war constitution. And that's a sad day for the whole world when peace is thrown out the window again. And the alliance that the United States is making with Japan and other countries in the region is worrisome because it indicates that the U.S. Is planning some sort of military conflict with China when the economic competition that China has for the U.S. and other parts of the world seem to be the big problem. It's not China hasn't invaded anyone, although they have gone to some of the South China Sea islands, and they have developed those small islands into military bases, which is worrisome. But it's not as worrisome as the 800 military bases that the United States has all over the world. So the alliance structure that calls for Japan and for South Korea, for Australia, for New Zealand to be partners in a U.S. and now a NATO war. NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, has now moved into the Pacific. NATO is opening an office in Japan, and NATO countries are participating. The European countries are participating in the rim of the Pacific military naval war exercises that are going on off Hawaii in July and August. 8 NATO countries have sent ships to be a part of the rim of the Pacific, and yet they're from the Atlantic. So the United States is opening up many fronts on really challenging the economy of China, but by challenging it through potential military action, which makes no sense at all. No sense at all. What the United States would be expecting out of Japan through this new defense alliance would be the use of all of the equipment that you have just mentioned, the weapons, the missile systems, increased weaponry that's purchased with the 2% now that the Japanese budget now goes to the military, which is what has been called for the budgets of NATO countries, 2%. So Japan is already following in the lead of NATO countries to make much more military expenditures. And of course, all of these expenditures come at the lessening of services for citizens in health, education, transportation, all of the things that we need to survive as citizens in the world. So I don't know specifically what the war plans may call for Japan, should there be a conflict with China, but it would probably be missile defense systems. It would probably be use of naval vessels. It would probably be having ground forces on alert, maybe not using them. But for us in the communities of the world that say no military action, I mean, these things must be settled by diplomacy, by words. It can be an economic competition, but the confrontation has to be of words. If one nation is breaking international tariffs or intellectual property rights or things like that, there are nonviolent ways to resolve these issues. And a buildup of military forces is not the way to do it. Of course, the whole issue of Taiwan comes into play, and that is the red line that China has given on one level, that Taiwan is a republic or a province of China. The U.S. has recognized that for over 50 years, and yet now the U.S. Continues to prop up and expand the Taiwanese military, which is a provocation to the People's Republic of China. So it's a dangerous situation, and the U.S. is marshaling forces all along the Asia-Pacific area to include a huge construction project in the islands of Micronesia, Palau, Guam, a massive buildup in the infrastructure for runways, airports, and things like that. So it's dangerous, and that's why it's important for us as citizens of peace that we have to keep pushing back against our governments that seem to want to use our young men and women to go to war and to get killed.
Thank you very much. 5月の妨害を乗り越えて、ガザに、支援物資を運ぶ船団の主要オーガナイザーとして、救援活動に入られるにあたって、どんな気持ちでガザに向かっていますか？そのためにどんな準備をしていらっしゃいますか？5月には入れなかったのに、どのような経緯で8月にガザに入れるようになったのか教えてください。
Well, thank you for the question about the genocide that's going on in Gaza, the Israeli genocide of Palestinians in Gaza that the U.S. government and many governments of the world are complicit in as they provide weapons to the state of Israel to continue the assault, the murder of now over 40,000 Palestinians in the last 9 months, and tens of thousands of Palestinians that are under the rubble, where the massive destruction of the buildings of Gaza has been occurring for the last 9 months. I am part of the organizing team of the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, and we are continuing. For the last 15 years, we have sailed boats to try to break the illegal Israeli naval blockade of Gaza. In 2008, we had 5 vessels that actually got into Gaza and returned back, carrying people from Gaza. Since 2009, not one vessel has been able to get into Gaza. The Israeli naval forces stop us in international waters. They seize the vessel, they arrest the people on board, take us to Ashdod Harbor and imprison us for anywhere from 3 to 10 days, and then deport us from Israel. So now we have one vessel that's actually underway from Norway and has gone through 10 ports in Northern Europe, is coming around the Iberian Peninsula, going into the Mediterranean, and by the first part of August will be at the port of departure to head for Gaza. We have 3 other vessels that are in Turkey, and in May of this last year, the flagging of the ships by the country of Guinea-Bissau was the country withdrew the flags, so we could not sail the vessels. So for the past 2 months, we've been negotiating with other countries to get the flags of their country so we can sail the big ships. By international law, you have to have these flags, which means the boats have been inspected, they comply with international regulations, and our ships do, but it's taking us a long time to get the actual paperwork done on the flags. We hope by the middle of July we will be have the flags and we'll be able to call hundreds of volunteers from all over the world to come and be on these boats, and then we will sail the boats toward Gaza. Now, Gaza is in a conflict situation, and the Israeli military is killing everybody. All the Palestinians, they are killing international workers. And so we anticipate that the Israelis would be they do not want us sailing into their combat area, nor does the United States and Germany and other countries that have their ships along the coast of Gaza. So we will evaluate as the time approaches for the boats to leave. We intend to sail them toward Gaza. Now, whether or not they actually are able to get anywhere close to Gaza, we don't know. We are not going on a suicide mission. We are not sending the boats into a situation where we think people may get killed. We're not going to do that. But we are sailing the boats to say to Israel, to say to the United States, to say to all the supporters of the genocide that we as citizens of the world have to do something. We have to make our voices known. We as people all over the world have been doing massive demonstrations in Japan and other countries around the world saying the genocide must stop. There must be a ceasefire. So we will sail the boats and we will make our presence known. And we hope we are able to get aid into the people of Gaza. We have already sent one cargo ship to an Egyptian port, and it's already been unloaded. And the humanitarian assistance is in the long line of trucks that are now stopped by Egypt and Israel. So one of our demands of the flotilla is that the border crossings open so that the life-saving food and medicines that have been sitting there for months are allowed to go in. So ours is a mission of bringing attention to the world. We hope we could get into Gaza, but the history of the flotilla is that for the last 14 years, we've not been able to. And I sincerely doubt, with a war going on, that we're going to be allowed to go into Gaza. But we are definitely going to be making our voices and our presence known in the Mediterranean on behalf of the people of the world, saying the genocide must stop. There must be a ceasefire. The horrible things going on in the West Bank must stop. So it's so important that we sail these boats on behalf of the people of the world that say no more killing of Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank, no more killing of people in anywhere in the world.
Wonderful. Thank you. 今、その各国で、国民の意識、国民の考えていることと、その国民が選挙で選んだ中央の政治家のやっていることに非常に大きな乖離、差があります。例えば、イスラエルの場合ですね、ネタニヤフ政権に反対する人々が街に繰り出して、ネタニヤフの辞任を求めるという大きなデモが繰り広げられていますけれども、こういったニュースが伝えられません。あるいは NATO 諸国で、その NATO のそれぞれの国の国民が 街に繰り出して、この国は NATO から脱退しろという声を上げていますけども、そのような声もなかなか伝わってきません。このように、選挙で選ばれた政治家が、その選挙民に、自分の国民の意思とまるっきり違うことをしているということが、日米だけでなく世界中で今起こっているという現実がありますが、そのことについて何かご意見があったら教えてください。
Mhm. Well, it's very important that we as citizens of our countries really put pressure on our elected officials. We in the United States, for the last 7 months, we've been going into the U.S. Congress every single day with groups of people from 10 to 30, 50 people, going to 20 or 30 offices per day to push for a ceasefire, to push for the Congress to tell the U.S. administration, President Biden, there must be a ceasefire. And it took 7 months before Biden actually called for a ceasefire. We only have 80 members of Congress that have called for a ceasefire. That's despite all of the citizen activism that's been going on since October. So it's very difficult, but it's what we have to do. We have to keep putting pressure on the presidents, the executive branch, the congressional, parliamentary branches of government. And the way to do it is to be out in the streets, to be, if you can get into your congressional offices, to go there. We had a demonstration well, virtually there's a demonstration every day in front of the White House on Gaza, and on other issues. Now we're doing No to NATO this week. So it's important that we do this because the mainstream media does not push back on government policies. Most of the media in the United States is a mouthpiece for the U.S. administrations. And it's a horrific situation where you're unable to get the actual information that you need about the level of protests that are going on of these policies, these killing policies. So it's up to us as citizens, and we have to take time out of our busy lives to put emphasis on these situations that are resulting in the deaths of people around the world. So it's up to us, and we will do it.
大変ありがとうございました。そうして一般市民として何をすべきか、何が有効かという具体的な方法まで教えてくださって本当にありがとうございます。
Well, thank you. And we look to Japan. You all have some great demonstrations, and we in the US, sometimes we get to see them. And so we appreciate very much the solidarity.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you very much. Peace.
Peace. Thank you.
Thank you.